Okay, it is 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time, Thursday, January 3rd, 2019. And welcome to the Week 1 open house for contemporary issues in criminal justice. And I look forward to the next 11 weeks with each of you. One thing about this class, uh, I know many of you from previous classes that you've had with me, and I'm going to provide some details in this open house concerning the expectations for the quarter, and then I'm going to end up by sharing a little bit about me, which many of you already know, but just in case there's a few of you who don't know, you'll have a chance to hear the story one more time right at the end. I will say this, that you will note that our lectures will take place according to the schedule that we have here, and that today's lecture is longer because of the information I give at the end about myself. But then every week after that, the lecture is going to be very brief in this course and will not probably even last an hour in most instances, maybe even a half an hour or so to give you some details. So anyway, without any further ado, let's get started. I'm going to share my screen. So let's get right to it. Here it is. Okay, right at the beginning, you'll see information about me, which is my name, my phone number. Now, that phone number that you see, that 630-660-8480, is a cell phone number, which is this phone right here. And I give my students my phone number, and then you also have my email address. And I want you to know that this means what it says. Most of you already know this. It says students can feel free to call me, text me, or email me any hour of the day except the 25th hour of the day. Now, let me say this, that it means what it says. If you text me, please be sure to add your name, because I'll just see a phone number because you're not in my contacts, and let me know which course that you're in, because I teach several courses. So that's if you text me. And sometimes I will respond back if I see that the text is involved with a phone call to you. If you are at work or engaged, don't feel obligated to answer. Just listen to the message when you get a chance to, and or text me back to let me know that, because my objective and goal is to respond very quickly. I don't like to keep texts sitting without responding, or emails either as well. So very important that you understand that, okay? And then the other thing is, in this course, these are some things that are very important. Notice rubrics are capitalized. There are rubrics that are in this course, and they're on the course homepage. And I always make sure that my students understand that these rubrics are very important. And in the rubrics, it talks about APA. Now, you're going to discover that I'm really dogmatic about APA. If you don't do the citations in the body and references at the end, you will lose points. You will lose 5 points to be exact. And then the other thing is, you could lose 3 points if you just throw one citation in the body of the paper. Citations should be provided throughout the body of the paper, because citations provide support to your statements that are included in your written assignments. So it's important that you do that. And the other part of APA is a cover sheet, which you'll lose a point if you don't have that, which you're going to see in just a minute. And you will also discover that I want you to do some research along with whatever it is that you are writing about. Okay, I am going to cover the field project in a bit, so just hold on. Now, critical thinking is also very important because I run every one of your papers through Grammarly to determine whether or not you're including critical thinking. The way you reduce the percentage of Grammarly plagiarism is not just by providing citations and references, but also by providing and applying your critical thinking, which at this juncture of the program, you all are very familiar with this, and this is not the first time you've heard this, but you're going to hear it again tonight. I'm really, really, really tough on critical thinking, and I'll explain that a little later. And so these are all very important things in grading the assignment. And then there are other additional course requirements. There is no textbook in this course, so you don't really have to worry too much about this. But I already elaborated on APA, citations in the body, and references at the end. And then I also elaborated on the 1 point loss for not having a cover sheet. These are all very important requirements throughout the course. And then there are other things included in here, resources that can help you, various articles, and so forth. And then there's the video about critical thinking if you wanted to take a look at that. And now, after that, your all-important rubrics. You will see every week that there are rubrics. And it tells you the title, it tells you the criteria, it tells you what you have to provide. And then it always says grammar and APA and the required page count. And when I say required page count, you'll see in your assignments that some will require 2 pages, some will require 1 page. But the key thing is, and to get your total points, and I grade you by these rubrics because they line up with what is in the course. These rubrics were prepared for this course for each assignment, and you'll discover that each week there's one. There's a written rubric every single week. Some weeks you'll have your field work also. It's included in there, the rubric. So it goes all the way through the entire 11 weeks. Okay? And so here is your schedule for your live lectures. Of course, this is the link to arrive here. And lectures will take place 6:30 to 7:30. Except tonight, as I said, it will be a little longer, beginning today. And then, as I said, today is an open house, and the remaining lectures take place in weeks 3, 6, 8, and 10. So after today's lecture, you'll have just 4 more lectures. Weeks 3, 6, 8, and 10 on Wednesdays, 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Central Standard. So if you're in another time zone, just remember, if, for example, if you're in the Eastern time zone, 6:30 here is 7:30 your time. So you should never miss. If you're west of here and you're Rocky Mountain, then you're going to have to adjust up because 5:30 your time is 6:30. And then if you're on the West Coast, like California or someplace like that, then it's going to be 4:30 your time, which is 6:30 our time here. Okay? You must attend the lecture or view the archive. And a keyword will be given each week. At the end of this session, there will be, or during the session, you're going to need to listen to it. And I do highly recommend, don't just get into the habit of coming to the session just to get the keyword. you will get points for that, but you will miss some very valuable guidance that can help you to succeed. You're going to discover in this course that the lectures are going to be heavily engaged in preparing you for your exit. We're going to deal with everything from resumes to interviewing to communication and all of those different things. And so we want to make sure that you're prepared. So this is our lecture schedule. It is also indicated in every announcement when there is a lecture. It is also indicated on the course calendar, which we will be viewing in just a few minutes. Okay, so let's take a few minutes to look at our announcements. You know about the start time and all of that. And be aware that your discussion posts for this week are due today at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Now, starting in the second week, it's going to be due, initial posts are going to be due Tuesdays. Every Tuesday by 11:59 p.m. Central, we're going to cover that as well. And then this is a little something to help you with APA assistance, which I've already provided. And then this reminds you about the session that's taking place right now, the open house. So then I sent to each of you, the first announcement that you would note is the welcome announcement. In the welcome announcement, it gives you a little about me in the first paragraph. And then these are things that are very important. Pay close attention to the announcements. Pay close attention because it contains guidance and information about your written assignments, due dates, and things like that. And then this week, if you post an introduction in the student lounge, you'll see mine there, and some of you have replied to it. And so we're going to be done with that by next week because it's an introduction thing for you. And then check your course mail. Now, your course mail is different from your student mail. They may use the same thing, but it's limited to the communication within the course. And so I recommend very seriously that you check your course mail quite frequently. There's a little section that says course messages. And if you click on that, you will see your course mail. Read the syllabus. I'm going to go over that in a few minutes because it's the contract between the college and yourself. It covers things like academic integrity, the attendance policy, late assignment submission, and so forth. Then your calendar, which we're going to go over in a few minutes, contains important dates. You might want to take the calendar and maybe copy it, but at any rate, check the calendar for important dates. If anything changes, I will put an announcement out to let you know changes, but the calendar is set for the next 11 weeks. General course questions, these are questions that anyone can post under the discussion section for everyone to see. Now, these are not questions that are private that you want, to pass between you and I. These are questions that you have something that anybody can answer. Any student can even answer. And it benefits everybody, and everybody has access to the information in those course questions. The Resources tab finds very valuable resources, such as Grammarly. And where's the Resources tab? It's located at the top. It's actually right under this picture. There it is right there. Okay, along with the calendar. So there's a Resources tab. And if you click on that, you'll find various resources that are valuable for you. This is for your grades, to check your grade book. Now, let me say from the beginning that your grades are generally going to be posted within a week after you complete the assignments. So pretty much, as I say to you this, sometimes I fall a little behind, but I generally try to get them done by the Friday after your assignment. So all assignments are written assignments, with the exception of discussion posts, are due 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time on Sundays till we get to the last week. But let's just get into the habit of knowing that for the first 10 weeks, your written assignments are due on the following Sunday. So the assignments for this week are due on Sunday, with the exception of discussion posts. Now, we'll talk about that in a few minutes, but I'm talking about written assignments, all right? And again, your calendars also elaborate on it, and I also put due dates next to your written assignments. And then there's some information that I provided earlier to you, but I provided again in here, and it reminds you about our lecture schedule, and that's also included on the other section. If you have a technical problem, your first course of contact is PSC, as we call it, which is the Personal Support Center. They're 24/7, and their phone number is right here, 1-866-693-2211. You don't have to write it down, because if you scroll down to the bottom of any page, and I'll show you now, you'll see it in red right there, okay? So you can reach them, and they can help you with most of the issues, okay? And then this is a little reminder to check the lessons section every week, and you can select the Get Started folder. From there, you'll see things, and then we talked about the syllabus already. All right? So now each week, you will receive a minimum, maybe more, of one announcement, and it will be labeled as it says here. It says Week 1 Announcement. So for the first week, which is this week, an overview will be presented, which is really pretty much what I do in open house. And I tell you to look at the module and the grading rubric, which I've just covered a few minutes ago. And each lecture that I will talk about issues concerning assignments for the week. And then it gives the link once again to where you can find the lecture. You can either click on it or you can copy and paste it to your browser. And then the discussion assignment. Now, this is for week 1, which the title is Relationship Between the Three Components. Now, the deadline for the initial post is on Wednesday, which is actually Thursday. Let me edit that. It's not Wednesday, it's Thursday, because class started Wednesday. So your initial post is actually due, and it says it in here. It says this, let's see, it's up here. Okay, so your first discussion post is due there. All right, so let me fix that while I'm on here. Let me edit it, because I got all your announcements, so I can edit. Let's go back down to edit week 1. Okay, so that when you see this, you won't be confused. So we keep clarification. Okay, on Thursday. Then I'll say January 3rd, 2019. Okay, so then I will save that. So now, let's go back. Let's go back now. We can go back and go back to course home. And it'll either be fixed or it should when I refresh it. Let me refresh it now. Okay. Okay, now it should be there. Yep, there it is. So your initial post for this week is due Thursdays, but don't get comfortable with that. And the reply post will be due this Saturday. Finally, complete the written assignment then versus now. All written assignments are due, as I said already, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. The requirements are found in the Blackboard Classroom under the Lessons tab, and also I already pointed out to you the rubric, which match up. I will be discussing the field work component, and then it talks about the open house, which is taking place at the present time. You will see at the bottom of my announcements, my weekly announcements, let's start strong and finish strong. And you'll see my motto, adversity is the springboard to success, which you will learn why I say that at the end of this session today. Okay, so now let's go and let's take a look at the course calendar. Okay, and you can see the course calendar. Class started yesterday, and then it tells you your initial post is due today. You see that. And then the open house, and then your reply post. Then your written assignment is due Sunday. Okay? And then you'll note, starting with next week, week 2, that you have starting on Monday, then your initial post due Tuesday, not Thursday like week 1. And then everything else is the same. So our next live lecture will be the 16th after today's date. All right? So you want to make sure that you have that. All right? So now let's go down and let's look at the syllabus. Let's go through the syllabus. Syllabus, of course, gives my name, my phone number, email address, which I have actually double. If you send it without the 2, I'll get it in my regular email as well. And then this is a reminder of the things that I already told you about on the course homepage. And this reminds you that this course is a capstone course, which means basically the primary purpose of this course is to prepare you for getting out into the field that you desire to go into. And one of the things that's going to be involved here, there is no textbook. There is no textbook. And so this course is almost the last course that people take on their way to graduation. All right? All right. And then it talks about the requirements that we've already been over. Notice the course will consist of discussions, written assignments, your field work, then you'll have a program assessment. That's in week 11. And then there's the live lecture requirement, which we've already talked about. Again, there are the requirements that I gave you earlier. Now, here's the deal. So your discussion posts on time, and by the way, there is a rubric for discussions, which many of you are familiar with. Little short discussions, one-liners are not going to get it. You're going to lose points. You want to get your discussion posts in on time. You get 10 points every week, 5 for initial posts, 5 for reply posts. And you want to make sure that you provide information. Now, I don't require citations and references and discussions, but I welcome them. I also welcome responding to more than one of your classmates, though you won't get any extra points, but I let you know that I appreciate that. And many of you who've been in my other classes know what I am talking about. So discussions is our way of having you to communicate with each other and work as a team in this particular course, since we're all over the country. So this constitutes 17%, almost 18% of your grade. Then your written assignments are almost half, or 48%, for a total of 300 points. Your fieldwork project, which is broken up into different assignments, adds a total of 90 points, or 14.4%. Then your program assessment at the end, at the very end, week 11, is 100 points, and it's 16% of your grade. And then your live lectures, you get 5 points for each time that you provide me with the keyword on a timely basis. Now, your keyword is due just like your written assignment by Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Don't neglect just because it's the smallest percentage. Some students have, and that's a big mistake. That's a big mistake for 2 reasons. Number one, I discuss issues that are very valuable to help you because, you know, we're not in this class together, and also be aware that, you know, there are gaps, 1, 3, 6, 8, and 10. Those are at 5 lectures. So you want to get every one of those points for a total of 625 points. Now, I'm going to stay up front that my goal is A's and B's. Do not, I repeat, do not ask me, and many of you already know what I'm about to say, what does it take to get a C in your class? I am not going to answer that question because I don't help students get C's. I help students get A's and B's. And if you follow what I'm talking about today for the next 11 weeks, you will end up with an A or a B. But remember, those citations and references are so important. Inevitably, students don't pay attention to that, so I focus on that. I put that in my class several places so that you understand the citations in the body and references at the end. Okay? So anyway, this is my participation, which I try to do. Okay. See, it says all assignments, including discussion forum, are due by Friday at midnight after the due date. So then that means that that Sunday, I should try to have them do that Friday. Oftentimes, I have them done either by that Friday or either at the latest, I usually try to get them done by Sunday night. So over the weekend. So it might be a couple days off. But be aware that's how it works. So students sometimes will say, well, I'm trying to work on week 2 and I haven't gotten feedback on week 1. Doesn't matter, because each assignment is contiguous, except the field reports, which we're going to discuss that requirement. One of the most important things that we do in this program and in this school is deal with transferable skills. And each of your courses and your assignments are designed to help you become very good at transferable skills. Now, it means what it says, transferable to where? To your profession, from education to your profession. So what we're doing is these skills are focused in your assignments, You can see them built into the written assignments. You can see them written into assignments that you're going to have when you get your employer. And employers have told us that they look for people who are proficient in the areas that we are going to cover. First one is communication, very critical. Written and oral communication is essential. That is why we are really tough on dealing with the next one, which is critical thinking. How you express yourself, communication. You're going to have to communicate with different people from backgrounds different from yours. People that you don't particularly care about if you're going to be in law enforcement or either in corrections. But the point of the matter is that these are people who have problems, and you're the professional. So you're going to communicate with them. You're going to have to prepare reports. Your reports are going to need to be accurate because your reports oftentimes end up as exhibits in court, and they can either make or break a court case. And it also demonstrates your professionalism in whatever area of criminal justice that you go into. So we focus on helping you with your written and oral communication. Critical thinking, as I already covered, we want to know how you are able to take a task and turn it into your own, how you be creative, how you can analyze it, how you can provide details, how you can think out of the box. In other words, they don't want people that are able to just follow procedures, but also you have to be able to be creative and find your own niche and a way to apply the rules, not breaking them and not changing them, but apply them in a fashion so that the ultimate goal of whatever it is that you're doing is met. Digital fluency, everything's digital now. I'm 68 years old. When I came out of school, there was no such thing, but now I'm up to speed with it. There are digital things everywhere. As a course, this course, your textbook is, but you don't have one here, but you know what I'm talking about from other courses. We have, most of you have one of these things, Apple or Android. I'm an Android person. You have iPad, Android pads. Of course, you have laptops, you have computers, and all of these different things. So you're going to be working with these things in school, and you're going to need to be proficient in them. You're going to need to be able to use things like Grammarly, Word. You're going to have to be able to use Excel, spreadsheets, and other things. You're going to have to be able to learn how to research and find information that's worth something. Diversity and teamwork. I already talked about teamwork. You're going to be working as teams pretty much in this course through the discussion forum. But get accustomed to working with teamwork, because every one of you, when you get into your various areas, are going to have teams that you work with that have special responsibilities. And then diversity, people who are from various backgrounds, cultures, spiritual beliefs, sexual preferences, and so you're going to have to learn to respect individuals in that area. We are very dogmatic at this school about sharing that because we're in a diverse world, and as a criminal justice professional, you're going to come into contact with people who are a lot different from you, and you're going to have to deal with them, okay? So we stress diversity. For example, in your discussion post responses, you don't shoot somebody down because you disagree with them. You may say, like I'll say, I disagree with you, and here's why, and then I'll lay out the information. But it doesn't affect your grade. Don't feel like in this course, if you say something that may be something I don't agree with, that it's going to affect your grade, unless it's something of content, something of grammar, or something that is basic information that you should be aware of. So we are from diverse backgrounds, and we respect that, and we develop that as a way of life. Ethics. I'm shaking my head because ethics is like one of the problems in criminal justice and in other fields. Almost inevitably, you'll find ethical issues in criminal justice, in politics. You'll find it in education. One of the things that we stress at this school is ethics, learning how to be ethical. And one of the things that we have an academic um, integrity policy, because ethics and integrity go hand in hand. Your character, who are you? And so my goal in this school, in every class, and I've said this, is to produce ethical, professional, and educational criminal justice individuals. So notice that ethics is first. Ethics is like the locomotive to taking you. And I always say this: if you're an unethical student, you're going to possibly end up being an unethical professional, and you're going to find yourself in situations that are not so good. So you want to, we stress ethics. In fact, there's an ethics course that all of you take, but you got to understand ethics in report writing, ethics in, like for example, you're in law enforcement, don't get caught in the code of silence. Don't get caught in trying to cover somebody else's bottom. You cover your own. How you cover your own? By operating with integrity and an ethical fashion. There are individuals who are ostracized for that, but that's okay, because I can tell you, it never fails. When individuals run into problems and they did something unethical together, and one will flip on the other and get the other person in trouble, cut a deal. In other words, your career is over and maybe you'll end up in jail. So ethics is so important. Professional responsibility, every organization, every area of criminal justice has professional responsibility, codes and ethics and rules, canons that you need to abide by. And then if you're in a particular department, like a police department, or either a corrections department or jail or some other type agency, you're going to be held responsible for the requirements, expectations that normal professionals would have to operate under. And so we stress professional responsibility, and I said it goes hand in hand with ethics. And then finally, information literacy. Being able to find information, research. Get into the habit of researching, finding critical, or should I say, reputable resources to support your positions and statements. Wikipedia is not one of them. Do you hear me? If you use Wikipedia in this course, and most professors, you will lose points. And I am very dogmatic. And why am I? Because in the courses, some other courses I teach, they have already built into the course saying Wikipedia is unreliable. The reason why, guys, is because Wikipedia is a word-based website. People can change information in there. And so it's not credible. So don't use it as a source. Don't get it when you go to work for an employer. I don't use Wikipedia. I don't even look at it. I use other resources of information. And so you want to have information that is valuable and be able to use information that will help you in your research. So now let's talk about the we're going to not talk about the attendance policy, because you'll deal with that yourself. But I want to talk about the late assignment submission policy. Now, be aware of this. This is so important because I have students always ask me about this. They said, I don't know about a late submission policy. It's in the um, syllabus, but I also talk about it. So I'll just read it and talk about it. You have up to 7 days after an assignment is in to get it in. However, be aware that each day that your assignment is late, you will lose 10% of the grade. And that's the problem that you have. So let's just forget about 7 days. Let's just go with losing 10%. So you start out with 100. Then you get it in on Monday. On Monday, you end up with a 90. You get it in on Tuesday, you end up with an 80. You get it on by Wednesday, you get a 70. So you see what I'm saying? Before you even get to 7 days, your GPA has or been adversely affected. So it is important for you to do that. Now, it says students may be asked to complete an alternate assignment. I don't generally do that. I don't do that because of the fact that I have so many students, I don't have enough time to do that. And so it is important that you complete the assignments that are given in the course on a timely fashion to maximize your grade. That's enough said there. Now, it tells you, it says online discussions conclude at the end of the week. So here's the deal. It says discussion posts made after due date will not be accepted. I guess I should say it this way. I accept them, but you get no points. So I guess that's the same thing. So if you put a perfect discussion in on a Monday, after the week, for example, let's say assignments, discussion posts are due by Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. That's your initial and reply post, all right? Even this week, that's the same thing, except your initial post is due Thursday as opposed to Tuesday in future weeks. So let's say this. If you submit your discussion posts by Sunday, both of them, you're going to get a 0 because the form ends on Saturday. Now, because I'm done with the discussion. The purpose of the post is to give your classmates a chance to respond. Now, I will say this. If you submit your initial post and reply post on Saturday, you will get points taken off. You will lose 1 point for each day it's late. So in the course of this week, if you submitted your initial post and reply post Saturday, what's going to happen is you're going to lose points for Thursday and Friday. So you're going to be late and lose points for not submitting your post on Thursday and Friday and then Saturday. So you'll lose 3 points. So there we go. If you get 5 points for initial posts, then you only end up with 2 points. So you want to try to get them in on time. Now, the key is to get them in on time and to have those discussion posts be not, good posts or something like that. If you go back here, let's go up a little bit. I want to see, it should say something. Yeah. See, it talks about discussions up here. And it says for each week module, you're expected to post a thoughtful, detailed response. Yes, no, or I agree is not sufficient. So, and then it tells you by the date that you want to get that discussion post in. So your discussion post should reflect some discussion information, okay, not just a comment, all right? I appreciate you making good comments to your classmates, but fill it in with good information. So now, back to the late assignment submission policy that involves getting those in. Now, here's an important line. Instructors may waive the late penalty or time frame in the case of extenuating circumstances as determined by that faculty member. I have the power to waive a late submission, not discussion posts, but written assignments. And I do work with students in extenuating circumstances. Extenuating circumstances are determined on a case-by-case basis. If I see you with a pattern of using a situation, like for example, I've had students that come and say, my computer crashed, my computer crashed, my computer crashed. I will not continue with that situation because I personally, if I have some problem with the computer, I'm going to find me another computer somewhere quick, fast, in a hurry because I want to maximize my grade. But there are situations that happen. There are health issues. There are other extenuating circumstances. I've had students who found themselves very sick, and I've even told them about possibly talking to their advisor about medical leaves. But the bottom line is, don't use this, my ability to determine extenuating circumstances. Let me put you this way. If you were in the position I was in, ask yourself the question, which you can ask yourself as a student. Am I really in an extenuating situation? Okay, here's one that students often use that I don't accept. I got increased assignments on my job. And I say, okay, that means then you're going to have to shift your time. You're going to have to, time management, which is one of the issues that is discussed when you first start this program. Time management, all of us have to deal with. I have to deal with it. And you're going to have to deal with it on a professional basis. So we don't want you to get into the habit of neglecting that. So one of the formulas for success in getting through college, as I went through it and others went through it, and professional school as I did law school, is I had to manage my time. I had to deal with personal matters as well as to keep up to speed the requirements that were expected of me by my instructors and lecturers and professors. So it is important. Now, there are times when situations happen where all of a sudden something hits you real heavy. Talk to me about it. And I already told you how to communicate with me. And if you know you need to listen to this whole lecture, it is by email, text, or phone call. Do not feel that it is an infringement to call me at 12:31, 2, 3, 4. I said the 25th hour. There's only 24. So that leaves you with never to use the 25th hour as a basis. And everybody should understand that particular point. My point is that let me know. I don't know what's extenuating. I don't know why you hadn't submitted your assignments. But I'm going to sometimes ask some of you, but most of the time, you know, the way that I went through school is that when I left high school and went to college, they treated us like we were responsible adults, which I treat you guys like that. But I also recognize that life happens, and I'm very fair. And all of you in this class who have had me in other classes already know where I'm coming from. I am very student-oriented, and I bend over backwards. But in the words of a person, don't try to play me on that one. So anyway, the late assignment submission policy is shaped by each of us in our course. Now, we don't have to worry about this labs and all this other stuff. And then I'm not going to talk about the incomplete issue. That's a thing that you'll have to figure it out yourself. I don't even discuss it. All right. And then I already talked about the academic integrity policy, dealing with all the things here, very important. Be aware that when you take a test or a quiz, we are not expecting you to have your materials in front of you. You need to go on and put that away just like you would if you were physically in class or if you were in one of those situations. I remember when I was taking the bar exam, I was in a room with a bunch of people, and they had these people called proctors. Well, we don't have that ability because we are virtual. But what we do know is this, that the assignments that you submit should be your own, number one, and number two, they should be based upon the proper procedures. You don't take a test with an open book looking for answers before you pick A, B, C, D. So you don't do that. First of all, many of them are timed, and you will run into problems. Okay. So that's the syllabus. So now let's jump right into the weekly module. Now I will tell you this, that well, no, it doesn't apply in this course, so I won't tell you that. Your assignments. Let's again go take a look at your assignments for this week. Again, it tells you what your requirements are. Remember I told you about the rubric. It gives you more elaboration on it, but notice what it says, 3 to 4 page paper. That does not include your cover page. That does not include your reference page. It's your content of your paper. And like I said again, it doesn't even say in here APA. But I already told you that the rubrics are going to be what I use for grading. This is where you get your information, but when I grade you, don't come back and say, I didn't see in Module 1 where it said we had to use APA. I refer you back to the course homepage. I say in all written assignments, and all means all. So you don't even have to say what it doesn't say. You know who I am, you know how I am, and as I said, many of you already know me very well because you've had me either 5.5 weeks or many of you 11-week courses. So it's very important. So you want to satisfy the requirements here. And notice that if you click on it, it's going to tell you when the date is due. No, it doesn't. It doesn't say it on here because I hadn't put due dates in here. I will be putting due dates in here. But again, you already know your due date because it's in your calendar and it is on the written announcement. Very, very, very important. And you already know your written assignments. You know, don't be caught by surprise. Oh, I didn't know it was due Sunday. I thought it was due Monday. No. It's not due Monday. It's due Sunday. Get used to that until we get to week 11. All right. So having said that, that applies to every written assignment that you do. Okay. The rubrics, very important. Your discussion posts, and then your live lecture. Those are your assignments. So for this week, you're going to complete this. You're going to complete this. Your initial post by tonight. Your reply post by Saturday night, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Now, let me say this to you so you know, and I'm just going to tell you. If your assignment is like 12:05, 12:10, 12:20, I won't take points off for it. I really won't. Until we get to the last week of class, then that's a different scenario when the course ends. But in the normal course, I've had students submit assignments that are due on Sunday, and they get them in to me like 12:05, 12 o'clock, and so forth, and they apologize for saying. I said, don't worry about it. I'm not that dogmatic about it. But I will, and the same way I am with discussion posts, the same situation. However, though, if they're outside of the discussion forum completion, I have no control. The school has a rule on that one. So that's pretty clear. All right. Your live keyword is due by this Sunday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, which I'm going to give you. Okay. So that's your assignments. And every week, in each module, you're going to have your assignments tab and then your lesson content. Okay. So the lesson content, usually every week, I will talk about and discuss the objectives here. And it gives you, again, your fieldwork component, your written assignment, and then it talks about this. Now, fieldwork component is not an assignment that you have to complete. I'm going to talk to you about that in just a minute. And this is going to be for the whole course, for your fieldwork, which comes up due when it's in the module itself for you to do it for that week. Now, some of you have taken a course with me, Introduction to Corrections. And in that course, you had to do a report. And then you had it in sections given. And then in that course, if you remember, you had to use corrections, which meant jail, prison, probation, or parole. Your fieldwork component, and I'm kind of jumping ahead of myself, does not require you to pick one of those four like that. You can pick whatever as long as it's in criminal justice. I recommend, never mind, let me pause that right there because we'll come into that in a minute. But anyway, every week you're going to have me, I'm going to discuss the objectives of that module. Today I'm not going to get into the details, except to say that this particular course, it is a course that gives you an opportunity to get hands-on. There is no textbook, and you're going to, this week, familiarize yourself with the three components of the criminal justice system. I'm not going to tell you what they are because you should already know what they are, but you will learn what they are, or you should already know. The three components of the criminal justice system. Demonstrate criminal justice employment readiness. That's what this whole course is going to do, to help you to get ready to go and work in an area of criminal justice. And that's what this week is pretty much all about. It says overview of capstone. That's what the capstone course does. It says what it says. It's a capstone. It puts a lid on it. All the information that you got in between. And that's why you have these assessments and these evaluations that you're going to have later in the course, which we'll get into. All right. It's more like akin to independent studies. All right. Now, so now I'm going to spend the time to talk about the fieldwork component. Now, the fieldwork component in this particular course gives you an opportunity to work in an area that you desire to work in the future, whether it's corrections, law enforcement, probation, parole. Maybe you're going to work in social services. Maybe you're going to work in as a human service person. You're going to be a psychologist, psychiatrist, or whatever it is in the area of CJ. I have a daughter who is a clinical psychologist, and she deals with criminals and works at the jail. So this gives you an opportunity to get some hands-on work. Now, some of you already work in the areas. It is already, if you work at a prison or a jail or a police department in some capacity, fine. That's no problem. But notice the purpose of this program and the course is to give you the ability to be able to have a minimum, I said a minimum of 10 hours of field work. Now, let me tell you, that's an hour a week or less. But I don't look at the hours when I'm doing my stuff like that because I'm setting up a career in life. So anyway, it says that within those 10 hours minimum, you are to complete with an approved agency of your choice. You can run it by me. Let me know what agency. I've had a few people already to do that. They've emailed me, and I've responded, yeah, you can do that. And then it's going to be documented and submitted as your final project. But you're also going to give what we call status checks. You'll see, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So it's important that the field work is, again, to give you a chance to see outside of a textbook how the real world operates. It says with these 10 hours, you'd have an opportunity to shadow a professional and gain real work experience. If I was going to be a criminal lawyer, I'd want to shadow a criminal lawyer. Prosecutor or defense, doesn't matter. If I'm going to be a paralegal, I want to shadow a paralegal, whether it's, and in this case, because paralegal falls within the CJ area. So, but the point of the matter is that you're dealing with psychology and things of that nature. Most of you will find yourself in law enforcement, corrections, parole, probation, something along those lines. But again, some of you will work in not juvenile detention centers, because that's almost like jail, but you will deal with individuals who have halfway houses and things of that nature. Well, it's time. It's time for you to think about you. Let me say this: you don't have to be. You work best when you work in an area that you've already decided. I think at this juncture, you might have some ideas about what you want to do. Some of you guys, and I have learned this about you guys, don't do that. And so you find yourself with the question that you ask. It's okay. It's okay. So then you're going to find an area that maybe intrigues you, something that you feel that you want to do the work on. So, but I encourage you as a first course to think about, you're getting ready to graduate, either with an associate's degree, heading toward a bachelor's, and you're something you're going to do. Otherwise, you're not just getting this for knowledge, information. You're getting it so that you can make a living. And so the key thing is that that's what we say that you will, it will best serve you. So you understand where I'm coming from there in terms of it, how you can still do this? You got it? Type yes or no. Okay, all right. And if you need some guidance along the way, you know me. Reach out to me. You know, I'm a different person from most people. I knew what I wanted to be when I was a kid, and you've been in my other classes, so you know my story. But I'm going to give the story again today, so you're going to have a chance to hear it again. But the point of the matter is that those who are coming into this juncture, knowing what they have an idea they want to do, you know, just like I had a student the other day who she wanted to be in law enforcement, but she discovered that she couldn't be in law enforcement because she was older and they wouldn't be able to take her in a police department. So she and I had some discussions about some other things that she could do. And so she said, "Oh, okay, thank you." And so, and we had this discussion during week 11. That was, you know, she had done her assignment on an area that she thought was interesting, but then she found out that she couldn't do law enforcement. But anyway, the point of the matter is that think in terms of that. Be aware that in law enforcement, there's usually an age that you have to have started. Not that you're well, they have mandatory retirements too, but that Usually it's in like the 30s, 35, 36, something like that. But it varies according to jurisdiction. That's law enforcement. And that's probation and parole as well. But be aware, too, that if you're going to do probation and parole, you can't do that with an associate. You must have a bachelor's degree. And we're going to be talking about that during the course of this next 11 weeks. So anyway, your learning doesn't take place in the classroom. And it says here, no amount of lecture, book work, or discussion makes up for firsthand experience. And that's how I studied, but boy, I worked in a law firm, so I had a chance to see while I was getting paid. But I went to court, and I sat and I looked at cases and looked at the judges, listened to the lawyers, and so forth. So it's 10 hours, not a week, but 10 hours for the whole course. And then it talks about some other things that fieldwork experience does, gives you a touch of what really is happening, or the real world. So you deal with professional, and also it helps you build connections. That's another thing. That's another important thing, and I'll be talking about that in the weeks to come. Oftentimes, the formula for getting an opportunity to work in an area, because there's some challenges with sometimes getting jobs, is who you know. Well, you learn by meeting people, by doing these assignments with people in an area that you desire to go into. So it's 5 steps, and we're going to talk about these steps. Step 1, research and identify a local criminal justice agency where you can complete the 10 hours. And then here are some suggestions. These are not the only ones. There are other places as well, but run it by me so that you can determine. If you are unable to conduct your field work in a single session, which some people can, but you can split it up over days. So it's 10 hours for the whole 11 weeks, okay? So step 1 is to identify an agency that you are going to do this on. And I tell students, don't get in a situation where you have to change later, because your course, you're going to fall behind. So the first step is pick the agency, all right? And the types of agency are given. And again, like I said, if you have some other ideas, reach out to me and I'll let you know what I think. Then, so you're going to contact that agency by letter or a phone call. And then, again, remember what I said earlier in your transferable skills. You're going to be operating with communication. You're going to let people know who you are, what your request is, establish a date and time for completing the assignment. If you need a letter or email, you can contact your dean and or me, and I can provide that. Most of the time, that is not one of the issues. So you want to go ahead and do that. So be very professional and so forth. Now, if you're going to do a ride along, you're going to want to get that set up as early as possible, and you want to get that confirmed, or an interview with someone as well. Okay, you don't want to just observe them, but you want to ask questions of them as well. So, step number 4. Okay, so then step 3. One module before your meeting, deliver a letter or make contact with the person, especially if it's a ride-along. Step 4, during your ride-along, visit, interview, pay close attention to everything that's happening, ask questions, listen, observe, take notes as you go, and then remember, you're a professional. You're representing the school. Dress to impress. Wear shirts with collars, dress slacks, pants, no jeans, dress shoes, no tennis shoes. You're not. This is professional. If you're going to a job interview, you don't have to dress like you're going to a job interview, but you know what I'm talking about. You're representing the college, the program, and also remember, sometimes that person might be a person that will give you an opportunity for internship or interview for a job, and you don't want to just go in there any old kind of way. All right, we're going to talk about resumes and all that a little later. So then, the step 5, in a 2 to 3 page report, document what you observed. At the conclusion of that, this is the final date. 1 to 2 paragraphs describing how your education prepared you for this, and the cover sheet and so forth and so on. Your name, the agency date, and so forth and so on. Now, you are strongly encouraged to schedule this as soon as possible. Try to take your field visit between modules 4 and 7 to allow enough time for you to get the information and prepare your report. So you're going to be asked to present your first report during module 5. So don't wait till module 5 to get started. And your final report is due module 9. Okay? Now, let me show you something so you'll see this. Let's go back to the course homepage. I'll show you this. You'll see, if you go down and look at the rubrics, you see your first fieldwork assignment that you're going to do is in week 5. And then your next one is week 8. And then your next one is the last one. So you have 3 written assignments that go with that. So basically what we want to do is, in the first 2, is see how you're doing, your progress report, and then your final report is due the last week. Okay, so don't wait until the very end to do that. Any questions about anything? Okay, very good. Okay, so now, again, our next lecture is going to be week 3. So you got week 1 and 2, and then, like I said again, please be sure to go back to the beginning of when I started at 6:30. Okay, so now for the next 10, normally I'd be through by 7:30. But today I'm going to go back into the class and stop sharing that. So now I want to tell you something, and this is what I want to tell you. Why I am so into adversity as the springboard to success. It all started when I was a 7-year-old kid, and my dad, I lived in a tough part of the city, west side of Chicago. My dad, I was the only boy. I was the oldest one. I had 5 younger sisters. I was 7 years old. Well, Memorial Day of 1957, my dad took me to a baseball game, and when we came home, a fight broke out in the house between a guy who was rooming and in the house and my dad. Well, my dad and this guy the fight ended in the bedroom where I was, along with my 5 younger sisters. Now, during the course of the fight, my dad was pinned in the corner by the guy. The guy took out a knife and stabbed him in the forehead. I remember that like it happened yesterday because I have a photographic memory, and so it's something that I won't forget. And so one of the things that happened after that is that the guy did not go to jail. They dismissed the case. He ended up staying in the house with us. We buried my father. He ended up sleeping openly with my mother. He ended up um, um, turning our home into a home of domestic violence. So between 57 and 62, when I was from 7 to 12 years old, I witnessed my mom being beat um, profusely. Uh, stabbed with a knife, beat with a bat, and all other kind of weapons. The man took his fist. My mom's face was so disfigured many times that I had to rub witch hazel on her, which to this day, if I smell witch hazel, tears will come to my eyes, not just because of witch hazel, but because of the flashback. So I went through that, guys, and I lived that. Now, it was bad enough that the case didn't result in him going to jail for killing my mother. But for what he did to my mom in those next 5 years after that, from 57 to 62, he would go to jail and my mom would go get him and he would come back home. So I lived in a house of domestic violence. My mother had 2 more children by this same guy, and they were girls. So the area was real bad. There were gangs in the area. Viceroys and Cobras were the gangs. I actually wrote an article about this, and I have done a lot of lecturing about it on panel discussions with domestic violence. Anyway, the gangs decided that they would not bother me. Both gangs came together, you believe this, and decided that I was hands off because I was the only surviving male, and they knew about what happened with my dad. But the area was still bad. So my mom decided in 62 to move from that area of Chicago to an area in Gary, Indiana, which was a beautiful area at that time, single family, grass. They had Little League. They had all of the things that, like suburban living, that you would have. And it was really nice. So my mom and my 7 younger sisters, the baby was born in 62. So we lived in a house, and my mom would oftentimes have me to be in charge of the house because I was the oldest one and the only boy. Well, came to Memorial Day of 1963. My mom left home. She went downtown. She had a barbecue restaurant with another family member, and she left to go. Well, came about the next morning. I woke up. There was smoke all in the house, and I opened up the doors and windows, let the smoke out. The oven had been turned on, but there was some barbecue in there in the oven, and it smoked, and that's what woke me up. So I let all the smoke out. I went to look, and when I was opening the door, I saw the car drive away that we had. And then I went and looked in my mom's bed, and she hadn't slept in it. But that wasn't unusual because she would a lot of times not come back until the next day. So at any rate, later on that day, this was the day after Memorial Day, then 2 gentlemen who were identified themselves as police officers showed up, and they told me that they needed to talk to us. And I said, well, I'm the oldest. And I said, you can't come in, though. They said, well, we need to come in. So they showed their badges and IDs, so I said, come on in. Well, they announced at that time that my mother, our mother, had been found dead in the city of Chicago. And I started yelling the name Webster Scott, Scott, Scott. That was the guy's name. For many years, guys, I couldn't say his name. Not because of any legal reasons. I just wouldn't say it. But anyway, so the guy actually turned himself in to the police. He said my mother attacked him. This is a little short woman. He's a construction worker. By the way, show you how he was. The way I found out about Santa Claus is when we were living in the city of Chicago on the west side. He got upset with my mother one year, and he tore the door off of the closet that was always locked. And from top to bottom, there were toys. At the top, there was a red fire truck, which is what I wanted that Christmas. And he pulled all of them down in front of us kids, says, "I'm Santa Claus," and took an axe and chopped them up. And that's how I found out about that. So this was the kind of guy that we were living with. So it's a pretty adverse, bad situation. So anyway, he kills my mom. He turns himself in, and we were taken back to Chicago to stay with an aunt. The aunt that we went to stay with, she didn't want us there, but she said we could stay there temporarily. There was discussion about taking us kids and splitting us up and sending us to different places. And we had never been separated. So we lived with her for the first year, from 63 to, and then sometime later in that year, or the beginning of the next year, 64, another aunt came from Michigan, and she said no, she was going to take us all. And she and her husband had a house built, and we moved out of that house, and we moved into this house that she had built. So here we are living there. Got a little better for us. In fact, the aunt that we lived with at first, she became a person who used to talk down to us, and especially me, because I was always a go-getter. Well, anyway, her kids could go to YMCA and stuff like that, and we had to stay home. I had to pull weeds with my hands, get on my knees. They would have pizza, her and her family, upstairs, and they would bring us the crust and that. So it was bad. It was bad. So anyway, back to the point, we moved with the aunt and her husband in 64 to a single-family home. And when I was living there in 64, it was brought to my attention that the guy had pled guilty and that he was sentenced to 10 years in jail. So I said, 10 years. I said, okay, well, I'm 14. I said, well, okay, 10. However, that thought was interrupted by bringing to my attention further that 10 years with the law the way it was meant 5. And that for good behavior, he could have a year and a half and serve 3.5 years. So I'm very troubled by this time. I am very, 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 very disturbed. I want to, I don't know what to do. So I ask questions when I find out stuff like that. Then someone finally brought to my attention. They said, Richard, that's just the way it is. That's the way the legal system operates. I said, the legal system, tell me about that. And they started explaining it to me. And they say these people called lawyers. So I went to the library, and I got the librarian to provide me with a book on lawyers. And I took that book home and read it cover to cover. And the next day, anybody that I met, I didn't care if I knew you or not, I'd introduce myself as Richard Wright, as a 14-year-old kid. Now, 14-year-old kids in those days were little. Now 14-year-olds are tall. And I says, my name is Richard Wright, and I'm going to be a lawyer. Well, immediately when the word got back to the aunt I told you we were living with at first, she immediately says, tell me, and then she reached out to me and says, do you know what you're doing? She says, you don't have what it takes. She says, your mother, my sister, she wasn't right, and she didn't raise you all right. So she was really dumping on us and our mother. It was really sad. And so she told me it wasn't going to happen. So anyway, here's how I am, guys. When somebody tells me something's not going to happen, especially if something that I set my mind to, of a positive nature, don't get in the way. I'm not going to answer you. I'm not going to say I'm going to show you, because that's a waste of energy. So what I proceeded to do was just listen. I didn't talk back. At the same time, that same year, 1964, I heard a lady on the radio that I liked, and I went and found this lady. I didn't know her, and I asked her to be my mother, and she and I became friends. And then she mentored me, and then years later, I will tell you this, years and years later, I'm talking about even after I became a lawyer, she legally adopted me. But anyway, let's go back to 64. So here I am deciding I want to become a lawyer. So I go to school, graduate from 8th grade, go to high school, and I end up getting in school. I had a high school teacher there. His name was Rich Trout. Mr. Trout would tell me, you know, I told him what I wanted to do. He was my division teacher, and he invited me to join a debate team. He says, "You're very good. You can communicate." So he encouraged me. He says, "Go for your dream." Well, while I was in high school, I worked for McDonald's, and I had a paper route. But I stayed away from home a lot because I didn't get along with my uncle, my aunt's husband, who we were living with, because he wanted me to take his last name, but I didn't want to, not out of disrespect, but because I was the only one who could carry the name on, because the rest of them were girls. So, any rate, I ended up having a hard time in high school. I didn't have help to get a driver's license or any of that. I had to wait until I was in my 20s and on my own to take driving lessons and all of that stuff to get my driver's license. So anyway, what happened is that I ended up making it through high school, and some friends I met at a church that was in the area that I spent a lot of time with. First of all, the church met with my aunt and uncle and told them that I was a smart young man, and that they would give me a 4-year scholarship to go to college. All they had to do was sign for it. My aunt said, "I'm not signing," because her husband said no, because he wouldn't take my name. So I says, "Okay, no disrespect." I says, "That's okay." So here I am, 18 years old, about to become 19 in May of that 69. I found myself in a situation where I spent time with my friends a lot, and my aunt decided she was going to leave that single house, and she was going to chase this man because he was chasing women. And then I would find this out, guys, a little later, many years later, that he actually went through my sisters, and you can fill in the blanks there. And so it was a pretty bad situation again. The two of them, they had guns. They would pull guns on each other. In fact, the gun was one time pulled by him, and he told us to line up against the wall. But I got out of the house, and that saved everybody. But my aunt still stayed with him. She was like her sister. But at any rate, came time for me to graduate. I said I'm going to move with some friends. My friends, their mom and dad said I could come stay with them. So I says I'm going to register for classes at a junior college, and I did. City College of Chicago, called Loop College, which is called Harold Washington now, City College Chicago. And I says I'm going to start out that way. In the meantime, one of my friends, they all knew I wanted to be a lawyer. His mom said that she knew a secretary in a big Jewish law firm downtown Chicago. So she managed to get me a job working in the mailroom. And there I go. I'm on my way. Now, I get to the job, and I'm in the mailroom. Now, all the guys, they dressed casually. I used to wear a shirt and tie, and they used to all tease me about it. But the lawyers in the firm, any of them I met, I would introduce myself and tell them the same thing I said earlier. My name is Richard Wright, and I work in the mailroom, but I'm going to be a lawyer. Well, I continued working in that law firm. While I was working at a law firm, one day I took a package to one of their clients, a guy by the name of Ray Kroc. For those of you who don't know the name, he turned out to be the chairman and founder of McDonald's. And so Mr. Kroc ended up making me his personal messenger from the law firm, and he had many conversations with me. So then, in the meantime, I got married. And then here comes the first child. I was born in 1971. I got married in 1970. And so anyway, 71, here comes the first child, and then 72, here comes the second child. They were both girls. So I ended up finding myself in a situation where I had my own, we got our own place. We had just a mattress and a few things. We had, with the little money I was making, food was tight. So anyway, in the law firm, they moved me from a messenger, then to a file clerk. Then they promoted me to a law librarian. While I was law librarian, I showed them that I knew how to research. I taught myself, guys. I went above and beyond. In the meantime, remember, I'm still in school at night. So I ended up leaving the junior college, studying political science, and went to a 4-year institution where I got my bachelor's, Roosevelt University, and minored in business. So I ended up going there and got promoted to the law librarian, and they found out I could research, so they created a job for me that was called at that time a law clerk. But what it really is called today is paralegal. So I taught myself, hey guys, I used to go to court with the lawyers. I used to go to real estate closings with them. And they did corporate stuff, but they also did criminal stuff, and I'd go to court. I even visited prisons and jails with them. So I began to be exposed and learn. And so I'd sit and I'd listen to what was going on. I'd hear the judges and all of this. So in the meantime, it comes to a point that it's time for me to make a decision about law schools. So I already knew what law school I wanted to go to, and I said, I'm going to Northwest University. And I was told Northwest University is very hard to get into. Well, I made the decision that I was going to apply to Northwestern and Northwestern alone. Most people were applying to 3 schools. I took the LSAT, which I didn't do too well in, but I was confident in myself that I could still do it. So I told one of the lawyers that, taught over there that I wanted to submit my package, and I said I would put together a package. So guys, what I did was, the application was like 6 pages long, but I submitted a package that was like this thick. I had all kinds of writing samples. I also wrote a synopsis of my story that I just gave you in more details, what I went through and all of the changes. So I sent the package over by the lawyer, and it had specifically said in the materials that they didn't do interviews because I found out that for a class of 250 that they had at least 500 to 1,000 applying for each seat. That's a lot of applications from all over the world, not just that. So okay, I see why you could not hear, because you finally got it now, because I had said to activate your audio to hear the lecture. So at any rate, the point of the matter is that I found myself in the situation where I got a call at work from the law school inviting me to come, because they said they wanted to see who was behind this package. And I did. I went to the law school and I met with the people at the campus. And I sat in a room. They said it was highly unusual. They had 4 people that were sitting across from me from the admissions office, and I don't even know who all those people were even to this date. I just know that they were administrators and professors at the college, at law school. So I sat across from them, and they asked me questions about the things that were contained in my package and about my life. And so I began to share with them. And so they finally, after about, it seems like about an hour, maybe hour and a half, and they said, we're going to talk to you in just a minute. And they deliberated, it seemed like for about a half an hour, and I just sat there and, you know, with a glass of water, and I just sat there, and I was all nervous looking around the room. So they come back, and one of the people said to me, we don't make decisions based upon these kinds of things. However, what we will say is that we were very impressed with what you said. We saw what you've gone through, how you did. Your LSAT is not the best, but it looks like your LSAT doesn't reflect who you are, which is what I say all the time to people, not just me, but others as well. Matter of fact, just a little footnote, today most law schools are moving away from the LSAT to other exams, which are better able to evaluate. But anyway, so they said to me these words, and I'll never forget them, guys. We will be writing you a letter in the next few weeks. We can't say we've accepted you into the class, but we will say that you will be very happy with what you get in that letter. Well, that was their way of telling me. So a few weeks later, I got a letter being accepted into Northwest University School of Law. So I ended up graduating that same year, 75. Well, that was a year later that I graduated, 75, from Roosevelt University with honors. I received all kinds of awards. I was written up in the newspapers because of this young kid who had gone through all these changes, who was on his way to law school. I received an award from the governor. I was inducted into what they call the Lincoln Educational Academy, which is like the Hall of Fame in Illinois, which even now in our state capital, Springfield, Illinois, my name is etched in stone. People can see it from 1975. And my kids have gone down, and I've shown them that. Anyway, I did well. So I got accepted into law school, and I started in law school. In the meantime, it was brought to my attention that for the first year of law school, that I would not be able to work at all, not even part-time, because first year of law school was pretty strenuous. So my first wife at that time, she ended up having graduated the same time I did, with her degree in education, became a teacher for the Chicago Public Schools. So here it was able for us to work out, so I could do that. However, I started school in August, and in September of that 75 year, that was the first time in history of Chicago that they had a teacher strike, and we had no income. So here I am with 2 kids and a wife and responsibilities, and we have no income. So it was a lot of pressure on me. We couldn't pay the electric bill, so I studied by candlelight. We had the food was really scarce. It really got worse, so we sent the kids to stay with their grandmother. But my wife and I, we toughed it out in an apartment. Well, at any rate, it was just a lot of pressure on me. So I went to one of my professors, and I told her that I was going to have to take a leave. She said, before you do that, I want you to come to my office and talk to me. So she took me in her office, and I sat with her, and she said, have a seat. And then she got up from the seat and walked over to the door. And I saw what she was doing. She said, turn around and face me, and I did. She said, stay seated. She says, you're not leaving this room until you decide that you're going to ride this out. Many have had troubles, but you're going to make it through. And so I shed some tears, and I took her up on it. And then 3 years later, of course, I graduated from law school, and she was there to congratulate me. In fact, she's still at the college law school now, and is a dear friend now that I communicate with when I go back to the law school. Well, anyway, back to the law school, when I graduated, I invited my aunt. You remember the one I told you guys about that told me I wouldn't make it? She got the first invitation. Now, when she got there were people who came to know me. In particular, there was one individual who he was a lawyer, very well-known lawyer, very popular lawyer, very sharp lawyer, and then he became a judge. Well, I used to go to his house because his son was a classmate of mine, and he also lectured at the law school. And he was very impressed by me, and he told me also that I need to have closure with what I went through, so he helped me to get details from the criminal court about what exactly happened in my father's case and my mother's case, and I have those documents to this day, and I'm including them in my writing for my book that I'm going to do. So anyway, I found myself with him at the graduation, and he was our commencement speaker. He was a judge then. His name was R. Eugene Pencham. Judge Pencham, he did not know. He had known my aunt, the one that I told you that told me I wasn't going to make it. He says, I know her. I've been knowing her for years. And he said something bad about her to me, and I just said, I understand. And that was it. So anyway, I told him about how, she treated me, and he said, that fits with her. He says, but so he told her right in front of me, he says, you should be proud of your nephew. She says, oh, I am. And she was talking the opposite now. Here I am. I got my law degree, okay? And you all see the picture of when I got my law degree in the student lounge. I posted that for you guys to see in this course. So at any rate, I ended up, graduating. Well, this same gentleman said to me, I would recommend that, and I told, he said, you work at this law firm? I said, yeah, but I said, I want to do criminal law for obvious reasons. He says, well, if you're going to be a criminal lawyer, you want to be a defense attorney and not a prosecutor. He says, because you will learn more about it. So I took him up on it, and I became a criminal defense lawyer, guys. I was good. I didn't lose a jury trial. In fact, he sent me, made a recommendation. I go to California in '84, some years after I started practicing, because I started practicing in '78. He says, you should go to California and go to this seminar put on by the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. So I did. While I was there, a guy who was over my section, this was his name, John Cochran. John Cochran. Some of you may or may not know that name. Well, later on, I would discover his name was Johnny Cochran, and he was the lead attorney for O.J. Simpson. Later on, we would hook back up again when he came to Chicago to set up a law firm, and since then he has passed. But anyway, I was encouraged, and I went on. So I found myself in a situation where I ended up having another daughter. She was born the same year I graduated. And so here I was out here practicing. I left the big law firm, started my own practice, and was doing pretty good. I started doing radio, a show called Know Your Rights, which was spelled W-R-I-G-H-T-S. The phone number was 974-4487, which spells W-R-I-G-H-T-S. Well, anyway, I was doing well with that. I then, 91 to 93, went to seminary. Trinity Evangelical Divinity School, that's also in my background, and because I became a minister. So today I am a pastor now as well. So at any rate, I went on and successfully did that. My first wife and I parted company because we were going in different directions. I ended up getting married again, and then I had another child, and yes, this was a girl too. So at any rate, one of the things that happened is that I became a minister in that church where she was. And so anyway, I found myself, moving forward. I ended up becoming the village attorney in a tough town because her mother was the village president called Ford Heights, and I became the village attorney, village prosecutor. And because they said that I said I needed to carry a gun, they said only police officers could, I became a part-time police officer. So I did that 4 years. So I was a village prosecutor, I was a police officer, and then internal affairs investigator because the police department was corrupt. Well, anyway, as I wrap this up, I want to tell you that I went through all of that. And then I found out that my wife at that time was, thank you, um, um, but I lived that. And so my wife, at that time, my second wife, and the pastor were doing their thing, so I ended up letting her go. Well, it was in '94 that I found out about all of that. And then in '94, my baby sister, the one who was the baby when my mother was killed in 1963, she overdosed on drugs, and I ended up having to eulogize her. That was one of the toughest jobs I ever had. So I did all kinds of stuff. I worked in drugs and crime as a police officer, as a defense attorney outside of the town. I did all kinds of stuff in criminal justice. I used to visit jails and prisons and all of that stuff. I worked with probation officers, parole officers, and all of that. And I was very, very successful in that. So finally, I decided in 2000 to retire at 50 years old from being a lawyer and concentrate on ministry. And I found myself, by the way, in '94, I got out of that marriage and then ended up meeting a young lady that I'm married to now that you see in the pictures. If you look at, we've been married now coming up 25 years in July the 28th of this year. And she and I have 4 kids, and you'll see those kids in the picture there. I finally got my first boy. So I have 2 sons and 2 daughters with her, and then I have the other 4 from previous. But anyway, I went through all those changes, guys. Then finally, when I retired, I ran a janitorial company. I did closings for title companies. And then finally in 2011, someone asked me about this school that I had never heard of, Rasmussen College. And they said they were interested in hiring somebody to teach business law. So I applied for the position, and I got it. At that time, it was residential. So I took the job, and I taught. But when I got there, I quickly let them know I was criminal justice. So I ended up getting a job there as an adjunct professor and continued working there. And when I was an adjunct professor, I used to spend more time than some of the full-time people working with students and things like that when they put me in criminal justice. I taught domestic violence residentially, and then they came and brought it to me that we're going to go all online. And so I taught myself, guys, and studied as a person in their 60s, learning how to be proficient in this. So I find myself getting a full-time job in 2014 with the college as the School of Justice Studies state coordinator in Illinois, responsible for all 4 campuses in Illinois, the Romeoville, the Aurora, the Mokina, Tinley Park, and the Rockford campus. And I took care of them. Then they changed that and started having me teach 5 classes, which is what I do now. And so I found myself bringing all of this to my classes and to my students. So I want you to understand that I have empathy. They call me Mr. Empathy. I am a student-oriented person. I am like my professor that I had in law school and a high school teacher I had. If you have skills, I'm going to help you with them. My objective is student success, guys. So there's things that you're going to go through, and I understand. So here's what I'm going to say to you before I adjourn this. You need to understand that I recognize that you're going to have children, you're going to have problems. I recognize you're going to have job problems. I understand you're going to have income problems, financial problems, health problems, personal problems. One of my students lost her dad. We worked this thing out. She became an A student because I worked with her and helped her. I didn't do the work. I believe that I can help anybody that wants to help themselves. And that includes you guys in this class. You guys have been in other classes, and that's just who I am. I get students who come in all the time to me how they enjoy my classes. And the reason why is because I'm going to be who I am. You can call me Richard. You don't have to call me Professor Wright or Dr. Wright or whatever. The point of the matter is that I'm here to be of service to you and to provide you what you need to maximize your time invested, your energy invested in obtaining your careers. And so with that, I thank you for attending. I'm going to give you a word that I want you to use to get your 5 points. That word is adversity. You put that in the Dropbox and send it, and you'll get your points. I will see you guys in week 3 with the next lecture, and the next lecture will take place in week 3. In the meantime, you know what the rule is in terms of reaching me. I'm going to say good night to you. I have another lecture coming up at 8:30. So good night and have a good week. And oh, by the way, Happy New Year. So thank you. Thank you. Look forward to it. Looking forward to it. Good night.